Are your savings stagnant no matter how hard you work? Make money work for you with MIDF Invest, an easier, safer way to grow your wealth by investing in stocks and ETFs from over 6,000 US companies. The bank is regulated by Securities Commission for your peace of mind, so you can keep your money safe while keeping it busy.
Hi, let me show you how easy it is to buy a stock from the MIDF Invest app. To start, download the MIDF app from the Play Store or the App Store. Registering your account with us will be very easy, and once your account is approved, you can click the trade button to begin your investment journey. Search for the stock that you like to buy, customize your stock buying options, tap on the Place Order button, and finally tap the Confirm button. And congratulations, you have purchased your first stock on the MIDF Invest app.
Want to earn from some of the world's biggest companies? Let your money work abroad. With MIDF Invest, you can invest in stocks and ETFs from over 6,000 US companies, including a wide range of Sharia-compliant stocks. Have questions? You can talk to our experienced happiness agents anytime. So, if your savings are still sleeping on the job, it's time to make them work a little harder.
Hi everyone, my name is Adnan Hazmi. I'd like to wish you a very warm welcome for today's webinar. So I think as per usual, we're going to start with, the house rules stuff. But beyond that, before that, I'd just like to wish everyone a Selamat Raya. If you, just got back, or and it's still during the Shawwal season, so I just want to wish everyone a Selamat Hari Raya. So just a little bit about me. I've been working in the financial industry for close to 20 years. I work as an accountant, whereby I worked there for about 3 years. Subsequently, I worked in the investment industry for about 10 to 15 years. And during my time in the investment banking, I was covering, I was an analyst, and what an analyst does is they would cover stocks and will try to find stocks which are undervalued, right? For the fund managers to actually take a position. And subsequently, I am currently working for MIDF Invest. This is where I do a little bit of customer outreach, right? And also teach financial literacy. So again, before we start, I'd like to wish everyone a warm welcome. And I guess the house rules are really, really simple. Number one, if you guys have any questions, please do ask, right? One of the reasons why we are having a live webinar is to enable you guys to actually have a direct response to any questions, right? The second thing is, if at any time I'm going a bit too fast, do tell me so that we can actually slow down the session a little bit, right? So chances are, if maybe someone doesn't understand, right? If other people will not understand, so sometimes I may go a little bit too fast, right? And finance could be quite a complex topic, so we want to simplify it as much as possible. And I guess the third thing is, have fun, right? So again, if this is your first time coming to the webinar is relatively informal. The whole thing of it all is to give you guys ideas and to empower you to be really, really good investors. That way, you know, can make really good decisions and I guess make money at the end of the day. So basically, this webinar will be divided into 3 segments, right? The first, we're going to do a little market wrap up. This is where I'm going to talk a little bit about the top 10 gainers, top 10 losers, and also the top 10 active counters, right? The next thing is we're going to dive into our main topic, which is sustainable investing, right? In today, if we were to read, I guess, a lot of headline news, right? We can see ESG this, ESG that, you know, the big funds are actually moving towards ESG, right? So, you know, let's try to understand what ESG is, right? And and the webinar today is to enable everyone to really understand ESG. So to tell you guys basically, right, when I was doing the research for ESG, it tends to be a little complex and a lot of language that is used within the industry. You know, you know, some people can actually get lost. In fact, even me being in a institutional space, right? In fact, I do get lost also. So right now, what my goal is to simplify and make things understandable, and so that you guys will be empowered investors and, you know, I guess make some money in this space. And finally, we're going to have a question and answer session, right? So real quick, I'm going to talk a little bit about the top 10 gainers for the exchange, right? And we can see that there is the first 2 companies were pharma companies. Immunity Bio rose by about 41%. Sarepa, right, rose about 30%. The next 2, I guess, technology type companies, right? C3 rose by about 23%, and Monday.com rose about 16%, right? On the other side, I guess the top losers for this couple of days, I think what I want to say over here, if we were to zoom in, we can still see there is selling pressure, especially towards the banking sector, right? We can see that AK Bank is actually a Turkish bank. There has been some, I guess, selling pressure. There's also Allstate Corporation. That one is an insurance company, right? Both of them are within the financial sector, and there is still selling pressure, right? So overall, like I said last week, you know, one of the reasons why we are doing this small little presentation, right? During my days as an institutional, I guess, analyst, right? What fund managers do is they will look at stocks which are oversold. If the stock is oversold, the stock will be undervalued, and assuming if the intrinsic value is above the market price, that will indicate a strong buy for that particular stock, right? And if there is, I guess, and if the stock actually rose above our intrinsic value, as I mentioned, again, what is intrinsic value, right? Just to even step back a little further. Intrinsic value is what, I guess, the analyst forecast what the stock should be traded at. And the analogy I gave over here is maybe a crumpled 10 ringgit, right? So if we look at the crumpled 10 ringgit, right, and if we were to pick it up, would it be 5 ringgit or 10 ringgit? It's basically still 10 ringgit, right? After we wash it, we iron it, the value is still there, right? So intrinsic value is basically trying to find the true value for that particular investment, right? So next is we are going to look at the top active counters over here. Just like the past couple of weeks, it is still the technology stocks. And Tesla has been time and time again one of the, I guess, top traded stocks, basically, right? And we can see, if we move a little lower, we can see AMD. These are the chips, followed by Amazon and also Alphabet, right? And there was news about Alphabet this past couple of days, just to, I guess, tell you guys. They are looking towards developing their AI. So it could be interesting times for Alphabet. And remember what I said last week, right? About NEO, right? So NEO was one of the stocks which are over here. These are one of the active stocks, right? So all in all, right? Just want to share a strategy lah, right? So I was thinking, and I think one of the strategies over here is that if remember and recall, since the past couple of weeks after having webinar after webinar, right, we could see that there was a strong selling pressure towards the financial sector, right? So if there was a strong selling pressure towards the financial sector, there is definitely an opportunity, right? So in the United States, there is this thing where we can short, or if the financial sector actually takes a dip, there are certain ETFs which will enable you to make some, I guess, some gains from this lah, basically, right? And this week, actually, we found this particular ETF. It is called FAZ, right? And this is an inverse leverage ETF. So recall what happened with regards to the Silicon Valley Bank, right? After that particular issue, and then what happened over in Europe, right? We can see that there were strong selling pressure within the financial sector. And over here, this opens an opportunity, basically, right? So if any of you guys still think that the financial sector will have a bumpy road or may have a little bit more, I guess, downside, right? Or it may go even lower, this is something that you may want to consider, right? Again, these are all ideas that we get just by looking at the top gainers, top losers, and also the most active counters. All of them, if we can actually read in between the lines, there is always an investment opportunity, right? Okay, so right now, before going to the main topic for this evening, we are introducing our web app. Over here, if you guys would like to try our web app, please do so. This is a QR code, right? Or alternatively, you can actually go to your engine, your browser, and type MIDF Invest on the top .my, right? To log in, still the same. Type in your ID and also your password. And after you typed in both these things, the OTP will go through your phone. After you typed all of this, you should be able to log in the app. And as I mentioned last week, within the app, we can actually see this powerful tool, which will enable us to see analyst calls on particular stocks, right? Certain stocks, you know, if they have a higher target price, this means that a lot of people think the intrinsic value should be higher. So therefore, if the intrinsic value is a little bit higher, it could be a buying opportunity for you guys, basically. So this is something worth looking at. All right, so let's move into the main topic of this evening, which is which is sustainable investing. But before we even go there, I would like to say a couple of things. Number one, if we notice that our webinar so far, right, we have been covering a lot of news which is very relevant, which is very fresh, and which will definitely impact the market, right? And the whole thing of it all is that based on the news that we receive, right, this is where we can actually find buying and also selling ideas. And as I mentioned a while ago, you know, from the top gainers and top losers, we can also find buying opportunities over there, right? And if we were to notice the last couple of webinars which I had, right, I talked a little bit about number one, inflation, right? How inflation is impacting us Malaysians, right? Number two, I also talked a little bit about lower returns from assets, right? When there is high inflation and lower returns, what do you want to do? We want to invest in companies that will enjoy an upside should there be any increase in inflation, right? Aside from that, I talked a little bit, I shared a little bit about the top 20 stocks, which is very popular on our platform, which was last week. And in this week, we are going to talk a little bit about sustainable investing, right? So why is sustainable investing in everyone's, I guess, in everyone's minds and also in a lot of media headlines, right? So I'm going to share with you a couple of reasons, right? Number one, when looking at the World Economic Forum, right? This is 2022, they have identified a couple of things, right? Which is the top 10 worry or the risk for, I guess, for us over in planet Earth, I guess, right? So the first thing is climate action failure, right? This is where things are getting warmer and warmer, right? And in fact, over in Malaysia, there were a couple of cases where I guess people passed on when I guess it was a bit warm in our country, right? So global warming is something which is it's very apparent, right? The next thing is extreme weather, right? This is where sometimes it gets flooded and sometimes it gets windy, so on and so forth. And the third thing is biodiversity losses, right? And the next thing is over here, we can see that globally, the world is getting warmer and warmer, right? Every year, we can actually see this is a measurement for the temperature, right? And bringing it closer to home, right? We can see that I think it was either last year or 1.5 years ago where there were floods. But this time, if any of us stay within Klang Valley, basically, right? We could see that there were floods over in Kuala Lumpur, right? And this is, I guess, the iconic Masjid Jamek. And we can see how flooded it was, right? And last year, it was not only the East Coast which were flooded, but also over in Kedah, over in Selangor, over in Perak. So this is truly worrying times, right? So basically, what can we do as investors, right, to make this planet a better place? Or what small steps can we do, right? So I truly believe that every one of us can make a difference. And if we actually take collective action, right, or group action, this will send an extremely large impact, right? So the solutions over here is before we even invest, right, we need to have an intention, basically, right? So overall, I guess the old paradigm for investing is to profit from their investments or from our investments. So over here is a little bit about capital gains and also dividends. But aside from that, there is another element which is investing with purpose, right? This is where we as consumers can invest in companies that do good. Basically, companies that do not maybe deforest or pollute. This is where we want to reward such behaviors. And let me show you a couple of examples of how this style of investing is slowly changing the corporate America and also corporate Malaysia, right? So amongst the filters that we want to choose while choosing a stock is, number one, we want to look at management. Number two, we want to look whether the company is financially stable. The third thing is we want to see whether the company is growing in terms of profit. And the final thing is to see whether they are a good corporate citizen, right? Over here, what we can do is basically look at the annual report for these companies. And if the companies, they found a way to actually produce, I guess, their products without much wastage or without much pollution, that could be considered a good corporate behavior, right? So how does one find companies which are good, which have good corporate governance, right? Oh, sorry, which are good corporate players. So amongst the investment style is sustainably investing, or using the socially responsible investing style, or the ESG style of investing, right? So what this basically means, okay, let me break this down even further. So what does ESG mean, right? Basically, before we invest, we want to actually give an increased filter for the company. Remember the analogy I gave a while ago. We want to, on top of making profit, we want to make sure that our money is working harder for us. And one of the ways is to also invest with purpose, right? And what do I mean by invest in purpose? We want to invest in companies that do good, right? And over here, there is a filter process, which is ESG, right? And E basically stands for making sure that the company does not pollute that much, or it stands for environment, right? So companies that do good to the environment or do not pollute as much to the environment would probably be one of the ESG stocks within the filter, right? S stands for companies which look at labor practices. Over here, we want to ensure that they have equality between men and women in terms of hiring processes. On top of that, we want to make sure that there's no pay gap between men and also women, right? And the third thing is to make sure that there is human rights also. No such thing as sweatshops, so on and so forth, right? And the fourth thing, and the third thing is to make sure that there is strong governance, right? Over here, make sure that the annual reports are transparent, right? And make sure that we report more than needed, basically, right? So why is this even very popular? As I mentioned a while ago, if we were to look at the, I guess, global environment right now, you know, the globally is getting a little bit warmer. And in fact, back home, we can actually see flooding. And not only, I guess, flooding within the East Coast, right now is even flooding closer and closer, I guess, to us, if any of us live within the Klang Valley, right? And quite recently, it was flooding in Kuala Lumpur. So one of the ways to make sure that companies do good, right? And by the companies doing good, we want to make Malaysia and also the whole world a better place, is we want to use an ESG filter. And quite recently, EPF, Khazanah, and also Kuak, they are the three biggest funds over in Malaysia. They have signed, or they became a principal responsible investing signatory, which would basically encourage them to be ESG investors, right? And over here, in terms of AUM, it is beyond 1 trillion already, ringgit in terms of AUM. And these are the biggest fund managers, right? So that's one of the reasons why the whole ESG space, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of chatter. And right now, even the institutional space and also the retail space, both spaces, more and more people are looking towards the ESG type of investing. So with regards to, oh, I see a question, hang on. Okay, does major MNC typically finance sector has any fundings allocated? Okay, hi Carl, thank you for the question. So this question goes, does any MNC, typically the finance sector, has any fundings allocated or a specific department for sustainability? Okay, that's a very good question. I will answer that. In fact, I'll give you an example, right? So I think with regards to E, right, we can see that over here, if you notice the picture, that's a little picture of KLCC. And I think about 5-10 years ago, right, if you guys still remember, there was this haze which is going around, right? And sometimes, you know, the haze will go on for weeks, right? And also, you know, a lot of people will get sick during the hazy season lah. So basically, it was either the rainy season or the hazy season. I still remember 5 or 10 years ago, right? And part of the reason for this is the palm oil industry is one of the 4th major contributor with regards to deforestation. And if we were to look at the major palm oil players, they are mostly located within Malaysia and also Indonesia. So there were massive amount of deforestation, right? This was behavior maybe back in the day. Today, however, answering your question, Haikal, thank you so much. We can see that plantation companies, they are taking a more proactive stance to make sure that they are responsible corporate citizens, right? And what they're doing right now, I just went through the Samdabi, I guess, the annual report, right? And they were talking a little bit about this particular concept. Since they already have their land banks, right? What they're doing right now is they're not going to buy any more land banks, right? The whole thing of it all is if we were to buy a land bank, which is a virgin forest, right? We have to do further deforestation. So Samdabi, what they're doing, Samdabi plantation rather, what they're doing is they're going to actually increase the utility or increase the productivity for their current land banks. They want to boost their productivity, and what they're doing is they are actually looking at the genome, or they're looking at the, I guess, the DNA lah, basically, right? To make sure that the plantations that they plant is much more efficient and it can bear fruit much faster. So that's, I guess, something which is quite unique, right? And I guess it's only quite recently when the ESG filter came in, we can see a lot of corporate players are being more and more responsible, right? So this is with regards to the environment. All right, I see another question, sorry. Okay, so the next thing is with regards to social, right? The S element for ESG, right? So the social elements is basically making sure people get enough pay, men and women. There are enough jobs for both men and women, you know, to make sure that they are equally balanced, basically, and also human rights. Over here, allow me to tell you 2 stories, right? The first story is back in the day, there was this issue about Nike making their shoes somewhere in, I guess, Vietnam or Cambodia, right? And what they used to do is they used to use child labor, basically, right? And sometimes they were like pictures, and sometimes they were stories of how these kids were chained to their chairs, right? So definitely not a responsible company, basically, right? So right now with the ESG movement, right, we can see that there are more and more companies which are looking towards fairer pay between men and women, right? And if you have to work within the company, we can also see companies which actually does provide housing, right? Making sure that the employees are much more comfortable, right? And the third thing is gender equality between men and women. And the fourth thing is, if they stay within that particular compound, right, they want to definitely make sure that their staff are happy and also healthy. They also provide healthcare. That is a social part for the S. And finally, let's talk a little bit about governance, right? So with regards to governance, we can see that there was this very famous case many years ago about this company called Enron, right? And basically what Enron did was they had creative accounting, basically, right? This is where when they had expenses, right? They will recognize the expenses as assets. So they will understate their expenses and overstate their revenues, right? And with that, their stock price actually flew. Every quarter, they reported at amazing results, right? And with that, their stock price flew. And until someone actually whistle blew against Enron. And all of a sudden, the house of cards came crashing, basically, right? So I guess locally, there's this company, this oil and gas company, right? That I guess also did some creative accounting. And yeah, and with that, after they have uncovered, I guess the creative accounting, this company right now is, I guess, in a bit of financial trouble, I guess. So basically, the solution for this is better governance and also more transparency, right? So I think the benefits amongst various stakeholders, right, are as follows. Number one, if we are investors, right, if we use the ESG methodology, right, as I mentioned over here, we will get annual reports which actually has better transparency, and we can make better decisions when it comes to investing in stocks, right? The issue is right now, a lot of small cap companies, sometimes they just release their financial statements just for the sake of releasing their financial statements. And it does not have that much of information, right? So sometimes they just do it for the sake of doing it, right? But ESG companies will enable investors to better understand the business. And by understanding the business better, and by this business giving us more transparency, we can make better decisions, right? So that's the benefit for us stakeholders, right? Now let's look at the company's point of view. What are the benefits from the company's point of view? Basically, if they are in ESG stocks, right? Fund managers like EPF, as I mentioned, they have, and also QUAP and PNB, right? They actually hold close to 1 trillion ringgit, right? So if you are in an ESG stock, right, you will be in the radar, especially amongst the big institutional players. So that's the benefit for the corporate guys, right? And finally, what's the benefit of, I guess, us, right? Let's talk about Malaysia, basically, right? And then we can talk about the global environment. If companies are incentivized to do good, therefore, they will be better corporate citizens. And the 3 examples I gave you a while ago is how these companies became better and better. And right now, you can see that there are less issues about, child labor, and also in Malaysia, I think you can see there's less hazy days, right? So I think overall is a good thing, I think, right? So actually we can feel it, right? And also, we can also feel it, right? That, there's less haze and whatnot, right? So those are the benefit, right? So the 3 stakeholders, number 1 is us, right? We can invest and do good at the same time. Number 2, we as the people also will enjoy a better environment. And if our companies start doing good, probably we will have a better working environment, right? Second thing is with regards to the companies, right? If the companies do good, they will have a resilient business model. And finally, the fund managers, if the people that buy the company, right? If they have better governance and better transparency, we can definitely make really good decisions. Right. So the analogy I like to give over here before we end this webinar, and I maybe will open for some questions for the next, I guess, 1 or 2 minutes while I'm giving this analogy, is this lah. So an ESG stock, right, is basically this lah, right? So there are 3 types of players lah in any sport lah, right? They are the skillful guys, right? So the skillful guys are maybe the stock which actually has high growth, really good managers, and is doing really, really well. So if you invest in a company, or if you invest in these good players, what they can do is they can win games, right? There are the second type of players also, which has good sportsmanship lah, basically, right? So these guys maybe are the more ethical players lah, where they try to do good, and people, I guess the teammates look up to them, and they can really glue the team together, right? But there's this third player, which is they are both skillful and great sportsmanship. So I guess what I'm saying over here is, if we want to invest in anything or any stocks, right, we want to make sure that we have the intent of not only making profit, but also investing with a purpose, right? Hence, I think ESG right now, more than ever, is very, very important, right? Okay, so let's open it up for question and answers. Is there any questions? I know it's already 9:02 and it's a 30-minute webinar. Is there any questions before we end? Right. So I guess I'm going to end this this small little webinar with the World Economic Forum. You can see that this is for 2023, right? And we can see that right now, we can see that still with regards to ESG, the focus within ESG, it is still there, right? So I think more than ever, right? It is very, very important for us to focus within this space. And in next week's webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about what stocks should one invest with regards to the ESG space, right? I guess if I were to conclude today's webinar, right, is basically this. Every time when there's movements within certain sectors, as I mentioned to you, oil and gas. Remember when oil prices were dropping, I was saying, start averaging down with regards to the oil and gas players. And eventually what happened is, if any of you guys took the positions within the oil and gas sector, I guess you guys would have benefited between 10 to 15%, right? So that's the first thing. And then right now, by looking at this, I guess the top gainers and top losers space, right? We can see that there were some stocks, right? We can see a trend, right? Whereby they were massive selling with regards to the financial sector. Let me just scroll it back to the over here, right? So we can see that there were massive selling on the financial sector, right? And I think over here this week, in fact, I think just 2 or 3 days ago, we came up with this idea of looking at this particular ETF, FAZ, right? Which would be an inverse ETF against the financial sector. So what this basically means is that if there is more and more bad news within the financial sector, or if we think that there's going to be maybe gloomier days for the financial sector, I think this would be a very good ETF to invest in, right? I think all in all, right, you know, we have to be, I guess, we always have to keep updated with the ongoings of the industry. And hence, that's why we have a weekly webinar, is to just tell you guys, right? And eventually we have maybe 1 or 2 really good ideas. And that's where we can actually make some, I guess, that alpha in our portfolio. So that's my hope for everyone, right? So right now, I don't see that many questions. I would then end this webinar, right? And with that, I hope to see everyone next week. Take care, guys.